Have you ever been in a perfectly fine relationship until your mind convinces you it's falling apart? A simple delay in a reply, a slightly different tone, or a missed goodnight text, and suddenly your thoughts are racing. Are they losing interest? Did I say something wrong? Are they pulling away? Sound familiar? This isn't just overthinking, it's emotional self-sabotage dressed as being careful. And the worst part, you probably think you're protecting yourself. But the truth is, overthinking isn't keeping you safe. It's keeping you stuck. It creates problems that don't exist, turns minor moments into emotional landmines, and slowly drains the joy out of what could be a beautiful connection. And even though deep down you know you're overanalyzing, it still feels impossible to stop. Why? Because your brain has been wired to scan for threats in love, especially if you've been hurt before. That hyper-alertness becomes a habit. And unless you know how to interrupt it, it will take over. In this video, we're breaking down exactly why overthinking happens in relationships and how to finally take control of your thoughts before they control you. You'll learn how to spot the warning signs, reframe anxiety into clarity, and finally feel safe in your own mind again. This isn't about ignoring your instincts. It's about learning to trust them without being hijacked by fear. If you've ever felt exhausted from your own thoughts, you're not alone, and you don't have to stay in that cycle. Let's start where healing begins. Awareness. Overthinking in relationships doesn't come out of nowhere. It's not just a random bad habit we pick up one day. It's often rooted in something much deeper. At its core, overthinking is your brain's way of trying to feel safe. When love feels uncertain or unfamiliar, your mind kicks into high alert, scanning for anything that might go wrong. You start analyzing texts, reading between the lines of casual conversations, and replaying moments over and over. Not because you want to, but because your nervous system has learned to associate love with risk. This usually starts from past experiences. Maybe you've been hurt before, lied to, ghosted, betrayed, or just left without closure. And even though this is a new relationship, your brain doesn't see it that way. It sees similar patterns, similar silences, similar behaviors, and says, last time this happened, you got hurt. Let's figure it out before it happens again. So it overanalyzes, it tries to predict and control, thinking that if it can just figure it out, you'll be safe from pain. But here's the catch. Overthinking doesn't protect you. It just disconnects you. It pulls you out of the present moment and into a mental maze that has no exit. Instead of enjoying your connection, you're watching it under a microscope, looking for proof that something's wrong. And when you look for problems, your mind will always find them, even if they don't exist. Over time, this creates tension between you and your partner. You might become more reactive, less trusting, or emotionally distant, all because your mind is fighting a battle your heart didn't sign up for. You question everything. You start to pull away or demand constant reassurance, and that pressure starts to push the other person away, reinforcing the exact fear you were trying to avoid. Another reason we overthink is a lack of internal security. When we don't fully believe we're lovable, worthy, or enough, we subconsciously expect other people to confirm those doubts. So when our partner doesn't respond right away, or when something small feels off, it taps into that fear. I knew I wasn't enough. This is how overthinking becomes self-fulfilling. It's also worth mentioning that overthinking can be fueled by perfectionism. If you have high standards for yourself, or believe relationships should be smooth and certain all the time, then any form of conflict, ambiguity, or change can feel like a red flag. But the truth is, no relationship is free from uncertainty. Love always involves risk. And the more we try to control it with our thoughts, the less room we leave for connection, vulnerability, and trust to grow naturally. Understanding all of this is the first step toward change. Because once you realize that your overthinking isn't random, and more importantly, that it's not your fault, you can begin to untangle it. You can start replacing fear with curiosity, anxiety with awareness, and doubt with trust. And that's when everything starts to shift. When you find yourself spiraling, your thoughts racing, your chest tightening, and every little detail turning into a potential disaster, there's one powerful technique that can stop the overthinking in its tracks. It's simple. but most people never think to use it in the heat of the moment. Here it is. Interrupt the pattern by asking yourself what you know versus what you're assuming. That's it. But don't let the simplicity fool you. This one shift can completely rewire your reaction to anxiety in real time. When we overthink, we blur the line between fact and fiction. Our minds create entire stories out of silence, tone changes, or small shifts in routine. We fill in the blanks with worst-case scenarios. But the truth is, most of what fuels overthinking isn't based on anything concrete. It's based on fear, on past wounds, on imagined outcomes we've rehearsed so many times. They feel real. This practice of separating facts from fear does more than calm you down. It gives you back your power. When you challenge the story, you challenge the anxiety. You create a gap between the trigger and your emotional reaction. And in that gap, you get to choose a new response. You can choose to stay grounded instead of getting swept away. You can choose to breathe instead of spiral. You can choose to wait, observe and respond instead of react impulsively. Over time, this becomes a new habit. It becomes second nature to pause and ground yourself instead of diving into self-doubt. And what's really amazing is how quickly this changes your emotional energy, not just for you, but in your relationship. You start showing up calmer, more confident, less desperate for answers or validation. That shift is magnetic. It creates space for trust to grow instead of fear to take over. One key to making this technique stick is to literally say it out loud or write it down when the spiral starts. Create 2 columns, what I know and what I'm assuming. Put your thoughts into those buckets. You'll often realize that 90% of what's stressing you out lives in the assumption column. This isn't about denying your feelings, it's about anchoring them in truth. Because only when you're rooted in what's real can you truly find clarity and peace. You don't have to believe every thought you think, and you don't have to follow every anxious urge. Sometimes all it takes is one question to stop the spiral before it starts. Let's bring this to life with a real example, a situation many people have faced, but few know how to handle in a healthy way. Imagine you're dating someone new. Things have been going well for a few weeks. You're texting every day, sharing inside jokes, having long conversations at night. There's a clear connection, and you're starting to feel excited about where it's going. Then suddenly, something shifts. One day, they don't text good morning. They reply later than usual. The messages feel shorter. Your stomach drops. Immediately, your mind jumps into overdrive. What did I do wrong? Are they pulling away? Are they seeing someone else? Was I too available? Too emotional? You reread the last conversation over and over. You analyze every word. You ask your friends what they think. You go back to their social media to see if something changed. You try to act cool, but inside you're panicking. This is the chaos. It starts small, but it snowballs. And if you're not careful, your reaction to that anxiety becomes the thing that drives the other person away, not their original behavior. Now let's take that same moment and apply a shift in mindset. Instead of reacting, you pause. You notice the anxiety creeping in, and you ask yourself, what do I know? And what am I assuming? You realize the only fact is that they haven't texted you yet. That's it. You don't know why. You don't know if it's about you. You don't have evidence that anything is wrong. So you breathe. You give space. You choose not to fill in the blanks with fear. And when they do reach out later, it turns out they had a packed day at work. Their phone died, and they didn't even realize how much time had passed. They weren't pulling away. They were just being human. That's clarity. It doesn't come from getting answers from someone else. It comes from not needing immediate answers in the first place. The difference between chaos and clarity is how you respond to uncertainty. One version has you clinging, over-explaining, or shutting down to protect yourself. The other allows you to stay calm, grounded, and secure even when things feel a little uncertain. Most people think clarity comes from the other person doing the right thing, texting on time, being super consistent, always reassuring you. But the truth is, if your peace depends on them, you'll always be vulnerable to emotional chaos. Clarity isn't something someone gives you. It's something you create through emotional discipline, through choosing not to chase every thought, through building trust in yourself. The moment you stop reacting to the fear and start anchoring in the present, is the moment you step out of the spiral and into your power. That's the shift. And once you experience it, even once, you'll never want to go back. One of the most subtle but damaging habits in relationships is what's often called the reassurance trap. It starts out innocently, just a quick check-in to feel close, a simple, "Do you still love me?" or "Are we okay?" But over time, this need for reassurance becomes a cycle, one that quietly erodes trust, confidence, and connection from the inside out. Here's how it usually plays out. You start to feel unsure. Maybe your partner is quieter than usual. Maybe they didn't reply right away. Or maybe you're just feeling off. Instead of sitting with that discomfort, you reach out for reassurance. Maybe you ask them to confirm how they feel about you. Or you fish for compliments. Or you check their tone, looking for signs of irritation or disconnection. When they reassure you, it feels amazing for a little while. The anxiety fades. Your mind settles, but only temporarily. Because the moment something else feels uncertain, you're right back to needing reassurance again. And that's the trap. The more you rely on someone else to make you feel okay, the less power you have over your own emotional state. The comfort never lasts because it's external, it's reactive, and worst of all, it teaches your nervous system that uncertainty is dangerous. And the only way to feel better is to get something from another person. This can be incredibly draining, not just for you, but for your partner too. Over time, they may begin to feel pressure to always say the right thing, to always be on, or to constantly manage your emotions. What started as vulnerability becomes emotional dependency, and eventually the relationship stops feeling light, relaxed, or joyful. It begins to feel heavy. So what's the alternative? It starts with learning how to self-soothe. That means building your own emotional muscle, to stay present during moments of doubt instead of panicking or seeking immediate relief. It means talking to yourself with the same calm reassurance you might give a close friend. It's okay to feel this way. Nothing is wrong just because it feels uncomfortable. I can handle this. It doesn't mean you can't express your needs or ask for clarity in a relationship. You absolutely can, but there's a difference between asking from a place of grounded connection versus asking from panic. One says, "I value our communication." The other says, "I need you to fix this feeling I'm having." That's a big difference, and people can feel it. When you step out of the reassurance trap, you start to reclaim a deeper sense of safety, one that doesn't rely on someone else's mood, words, or availability. You stop needing constant confirmation that you're loved or wanted, because you start to feel it internally, and that shift changes everything. It allows your relationships to breathe, grow, and flow naturally, without being smothered by fear. You deserve love that feels calm. And that begins by learning to become your own source of reassurance, not because you don't need others, but because you've stopped depending on them to fill the spaces only you can truly hold. Emotional security is what allows you to feel grounded in a relationship, even when things aren't perfect. It's what helps you stay calm when you don't get an instant reply. It's what stops you from spiraling when someone pulls away slightly or when a plan changes. Emotional security is the foundation of peace, not just in love, but within yourself. And the truth is, most people are trying to build relationships without first building that foundation. So how do you actually develop emotional security? It starts with a mindset shift. You are responsible for your own internal world. That might sound intimidating at first, but it's actually the most liberating thing in the world, because it means you don't have to wait for anyone else to behave perfectly for you to feel okay. Once you recognize the real fear, you can comfort it without needing someone else to fix it for you. That's emotional maturity. It's not about never feeling upset. It's about knowing how to respond to your feelings in a way that strengthens you instead of draining you. Another key to building emotional security is setting and keeping small promises to yourself. This sounds simple, but it's powerful. Every time you follow through on something you said you'd do, whether it's going for a walk, turning off your phone before bed, or taking a break from social media, you send a message to yourself, "I can trust me." That trust compounds over time. And eventually, even when someone else disappoints you or things feel uncertain, you still feel anchored because you're no longer outsourcing your emotional safety. Boundaries also play a huge role. People often associate boundaries with pushing others away, but in reality, they're what make deep connection possible. When you know your limits, what you will and won't tolerate, what you need to feel safe. You stop betraying yourself for the sake of harmony. That kind of integrity builds confidence, and confidence is one of the most magnetic, calming forces you can bring into any relationship. The most emotionally secure people aren't the ones who never get triggered. They're the ones who know how to handle those moments without self-abandoning. They give themselves space to feel what they feel, but they don't let their emotions run the show. They don't chase, they don't cling, and they don't perform just to feel worthy. They already know they are. When you build emotional security, you become the calm in your own storm. That peace doesn't just improve your relationship, it transforms it, because love can only thrive where safety lives, and safety begins with you. When you're emotionally responsible, you speak from your experience, not your assumptions. You're not trying to control how the other person feels or force them to respond a certain way. You're simply sharing your truth and trusting that your needs matter enough to be voiced without manipulation. Another sign of healthy communication is the ability to listen without waiting to talk. That sounds simple, but it's rare. Most people listen with an agenda. They're preparing a rebuttal. They're scanning for a threat. But in healthy relationships, people slow down and truly hear each other. Not just the words, but the emotion underneath the words. They listen to understand, not to win. One powerful example of this is when someone says, "I felt hurt by what you said the other day." A defensive response might sound like, "Well, that wasn't my intention," or "You're being too sensitive." But a healthy response might be, "I didn't realize that landed that way. Tell me more about what you felt." That kind of response doesn't mean you're admitting wrongdoing. It means you care enough to understand someone else's world. Healthy communication also means being direct instead of passive-aggressive. A lot of people think they're being kind by avoiding conflict, but silence can be just as damaging as yelling. When you bottle things up, they don't disappear. They leak out in small destructive ways. Sarcasm, stonewalling, withdrawal. These are all symptoms of unspoken truth. Speaking up isn't always easy, especially if you were raised to avoid conflict or walk on eggshells. But real intimacy requires real honesty, not brutal honesty, not harsh criticism, but gentle, clear, and compassionate truth. When you express your thoughts and feelings directly without blame, you create space for deeper trust. You show your partner that the relationship is strong enough to hold discomfort. And part of healthy communication is timing. Not every conversation needs to happen in the heat of emotion. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is say, "I want to talk about this, but I need a moment to process my thoughts first." That's maturity. That's grace. That's you valuing the connection enough to approach it with care, not just reaction. And here's the beautiful part. Once you start communicating in this way, you raise the standard for every interaction you have. You stop settling for shallow connection. You stop tolerating hot and cold behavior because you've learned how to use your voice, and that voice will always lead you back to your truth. Ultimately, healthy communication is about creating safety. Safety to be honest. Safety to not be perfect. Safety to work through the messy, confusing parts of love without shutting down or blowing up. It's a practice. It takes patience. But when both people are committed to that level of honesty and empathy, the relationship becomes a space where both individuals can thrive, not just survive. Of course, they're pulling away. You always mess things up. You're too much. You're not enough. You're going to get hurt again. These aren't just thoughts. They're beliefs dressed up as facts. And they quietly shape how we show up in love, trust, and vulnerability. The first step is awareness. Start noticing the tone of your thoughts. When you make a mistake, do you automatically say, "I'm such an idiot"? When someone seems distant, do you instantly assume it's about you? When something feels uncertain, do you spiral into worst-case scenarios? These reactions might feel automatic, but they're not unchangeable. They're scripts you've been repeating for years, maybe decades. And every time you repeat them, you reinforce them. But here's the good news. Your inner voice is trainable. You can interrupt the story and write a new one. The moment you hear that harsh, judgmental thought, Pause, then challenge it. Ask, is this thought true? Is it helpful? Would I say this to a friend? Chances are, the answer is no. And if you wouldn't speak that way to someone you love, you don't need to speak that way to yourself either. These are not just phrases, they're anchors. They remind your nervous system that you are safe, even when you don't have all the answers. That you are worthy, even when someone else's behavior makes you question it. That you are growing, even when you feel stuck. Your mind will resist at first. It's used to the old programming. It's used to bracing for impact, scanning for danger, assuming the worst. That's survival mode. But love doesn't thrive in survival. It thrives in trust. And trust begins inside you. Every time you reframe a thought with compassion, you rewire your brain for emotional resilience. You create space between the trigger and your reaction. You stop letting fear run the show. And over time, your inner voice becomes your greatest ally, not your biggest bully. Imagine waking up and hearing this instead. You don't have to be perfect. You're allowed to be a work in progress. You're showing up. You're growing. That kind of inner dialogue changes how you walk into a room, how you express your needs, how you handle silence, and how you respond to uncertainty. It's not magic. It's a choice. And the more you make that choice, the more you realize your peace was never dependent on someone else choosing you. It was always about you choosing yourself. As we wrap up today's conversation, I want to leave you with a few key takeaways, practical tools that you can start applying right now to stop overthinking your relationships and build the emotional security you deserve. First, remember that your feelings are valid, but not all of your thoughts are truth. Your mind can trick you into thinking the worst, but you have the power to pause, ask questions, and ground yourself in what you actually know, not what you're assuming. Next, challenge the habit of seeking constant reassurance from others. While it's completely normal to want affirmation, true emotional security comes from self-validation. Build your confidence in your own worth and watch how your relationships transform as a result. Don't place the burden of your peace on someone else's shoulders. When you find calm within yourself, the need for external validation naturally diminishes. The third takeaway is healthy communication. If you're in a relationship, make a commitment to communicate clearly and honestly. Express your needs, but do so with compassion, not from a place of panic or blame. Practice speaking from your own experience, not your assumption. And remember, listening is just as important as speaking. True connection comes from understanding, not just being understood. Finally, reframe your inner dialogue. Every time you catch yourself in a spiral of negative thoughts, remind yourself that you have the power to reframe. Replace judgment with compassion. Replace "I'm not good enough" with "I am enough as I am, and I'm learning." This simple shift can profoundly change how you feel and how you approach your relationships. Building emotional security and stopping the cycle of overthinking is a journey. It takes time, practice, and a lot of self-compassion. But the rewards are worth it. Deeper, more peaceful relationships, stronger trust in yourself, and a more fulfilling sense of connection to others. Thank you for joining me today. If you found these tips helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights on building stronger, healthier relationships. Take care of yourself and remember, you're worth every bit of the effort it takes to love yourself first.